Spotlight.
This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Cabinet Decision, India's emerging semiconductor industry. The participants are Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, Economic Analyst, and Laxmi Devi, Senior Journalist.
The Union Cabinet today approved a Rs 3,706 crore semiconductor plant at Aere in Uttar Pradesh to be set up by HCL-Foxconn joint venture to manufacture display driver chips for mobile phones, laptops and automobiles. Briefing the media on the cabinet decision, Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw said the plant will have the capacity to handle 20,000 wafers per month. 3.6 crore chips will be produced per month. This plant will make driver chips for displays used in mobile phones, laptops, automobiles and other devices.
जो भारत का छठा सेमीकंडक्टर यूनिट बनेगा वो जेवर उत्तर प्रदेश में बन रहा है। तक 5 सेमीकंडक्टर के यूनिट्स अप्रूव होने के बाद में बहुत तेजी से उसमें कंस्ट्रक्शन चल रहा है उन पांचों में, और एक का प्रोडक्शन इस वर्ष 2025 से स्टार्ट हो जाएगा। उसी कड़ी में एक और बहुत ही एडवांस्ड यूनिट है जो कि HCL आप जानते हैं, हिंदुस्तान कंप्यूटर्स लिमिटेड, और फॉक्सकॉन, उन दोनों का जॉइंट वेंचर है। दिस जॉइंट वेंचर विल मैन्युफैक्चर डिस्प्ले ड्राइवर चिप्स.
This is an important decision. Let's understand more about this decision and what impact it will have. And we have with us economic analyst Subhomoy Bhattacharjee to explain its impact on India's economy and the semiconductor business in India. Thank you for joining with us.
Hello, Laxmi.
What are display driver chips, Why are they crucial for devices like mobile phones, laptops and cars?
Yeah, that's a good question to ask about the display drivers. But before we get into that area, let me sort of stay a bit on what is the semiconductor chip. A semiconductor chip sits at the heart of any electronic manufacturing device.
Yeah.
So almost, and since as you can see, any device that we use now, any manufactured item that we use now, is almost always an electronic item. So the electronic item, all those electronic items, they carry several semiconductor chips. And just as you were mentioning, mobiles, laptops, and others, they carry sometimes several thousands of semiconductor chips. The average automobile has about 36,000 semiconductor chips to guide the array of functions in an automobile. Even a simple toy that a child carries now often has several semiconductor chips locked inside those devices. So you can see that the semiconductor chips are essentially the computer units which run any manufactured item. And the range of these items are expanding exponentially, because every item that we are now using, right down to, as I said, from a child's toy to a space rocket, to a robot in a restaurant serving food, to a traffic light, everything that you can see around is guided by the presence of semiconductors. So a display unit is basically one type of these semiconductor. In fact, within that also, there are lots of differences, lots of categories. But short of it is that these are the semiconductors which can, create the impression of light that we often see displaying many of our units. Like, for instance, in a mobile phone, when we have the units in front of us showing a display, that display itself is guided by several semiconductor chips working within the mobiles. In the entire world of semiconductor, there are just one variety of semiconductor chips. There are so many varieties of semiconductor chips that pervade our world and are pervading our world even more in the third decade of the 21st century and going on forward. Yes.
Why is setting up this semiconductor plant in Aere a significant step for India's electronics industry?
So, all of this, India had not been leader in the semiconductor industry, even though India had recognized the importance of semiconductor industry long time ago. But active steps to transfer that knowledge into manufacturing bases had taken time. And it's only in the past few years, and especially post-COVID, that once the supply shocks in the global market started impacting Indian manufacturers, that a very serious decision was taken to create domestic capacity of semiconductors. Semiconductor chip manufacturing facility is a very big deal. Let me explain why. A semiconductor plant uses raw materials of massive number of types. Not only does it use items, what I should say, the wafers themselves come from a huge range of critical minerals, which themselves are a very big deal for a country to secure. The production process of a semiconductor chip, right from designing those chips, which are called the prefab or the fabless units, which are basically just the creation, the design centers themselves are centers of high technology, because designing each semiconductor chip is itself something which is a long, painstaking, and a very difficult, high engineering exercise done inside a computer by hordes of technologists looking at lots of parameters to ensure that one chip design becomes operational. To transfer the design to a manufacturing unit, which are the fab units, as we say, is another humongous exercise, because that means taking the design to create a manufacturing unit where the manufacturing process means bringing in machines which often have to be created, sort of custom made for the process of making that unit become operational. There are very few countries, therefore, in the world which are able to produce these chips because of so many factors that come into play. Last and but not the least, each semiconductor chip plant consumes a huge amount of water. How much of water? To take a simple example, a month's consumption of water by an average semiconductor plant would be more than the entire annual water flow in a river like, say, Yamuna. So you can imagine the amount of water consumption that is needed to secure a sustained production system of semiconductors. Because of bringing all of those together, plus the requirement of skilled human power to be able to undertake that production process, and of course the consequent nature of financing that is required, has made creating a semiconductor unit a very difficult exercise in the world, and which, again, as I say, very few countries like Taiwan had been able to do. But India has got into the back because it realizes that if you don't have the control, or at least a substantial control, on the production of semiconductors, your path to sustain a manufacturing process in the current world is impossible to sustain.
Currently, India imports chips. How will this plant help reduce India's dependence on imported chips and improve the availability of electronic devices? To what extent the domestic requirement will be met with the setting up of this particular unit, as well as this is the 6th unit, and putting together all 6 units, to what extent the domestic demand will be met?
Yes, let me put it this way, that the amount of chip design and chip fabrication that will be necessary, even with the creation of this, even with the establishment of this plant, and we are just talking of the foundation stone being laid, and there are 5 more plants which are in different stages of operation, 5 more in the stages of being built. The one with the Tata's building is almost ready and should be able to roll out its first batch of production this year itself. But even with those 5 and this 6th, we shall be needing even more of chip in our industry. So to say at this stage that our import load will come down is frankly not even possible. And the government is not even looking at that. The Indian Semiconductor Mission is saying that we need chip of a quantity which is so huge that if we don't start producing now, then our import requirements will grow exponentially and we shall not be able to sustain our manufacturing sector's demand. So we are sort of racing just to fill the demand of even specific and very limited number of sectors. So to turn the argument around, it means that what India has started doing is absolutely correct and will need to be expanding even more and even fast in the months and years to come to be able to make a sizable dent in the demand for such chips in the Indian manufacturing sector.
So how important setting up of this unit, especially in Xavier, and keeping in mind Uttar Pradesh landscape and economy, what role it will have on local job creation and what kind of skills will be needed for these new roles? Is India prepared with skill sets?
Exactly. I mean, a semiconductor unit is a massive exercise which is, to put a comparison, it actually is even bigger than setting up the steel townships of earlier generations. None of the semiconductor units that are coming up are sitting inside any city, and rightly so, because these ones by themselves will become massive urban centers because of the presence of the semiconductor unit. Each of the unit will be needing huge number of, like Jever's unit, will be needing massive number of technology specialists to come in. That's just very small part. Along with them, there'll be an even larger number of technology people with knowledge of technology working in ancillary units just to supply those parts to the semiconductor unit. And beyond them, we'll be needing even more people trained in technology to be able to keep the unit, those ancillary units going. So you can see we are talking of a level of industrialization which is unprecedented, and especially for Uttar Pradesh is concerned, it has never happened before. This can, and not only this will change the entire industrial landscape of Western Uttar Pradesh as nothing has so far. It will draw in people from every walk of life, not only to do this work, but will also to do work for maintaining those townships. So in the real estate sector, in the services sector, setting up of schools, colleges, hospitals, other facilities to maintain such a township will also draw in that many number of people. The role of scope of employment in this place will be humongously large. Yes.
What challenges does India face in building and running such a high-tech facility, and how can they be overcome? There are environmental considerations. There is, as you mentioned, availability of water and skills. Few of the challenges India has. So what steps the government should take to overcome these challenges?
There are lots. I mean, as you can see that the basis, we are quite aware of the challenges. The Indian Semiconductor Mission has already laid out the details of what India plans to do. It is a very detailed document which lays out the steps of what we want to do. We have started offering tax relief. The government has already committed a sum of 78,000 crore. And that's a huge amount of money to finance the building of these units. The government is actually helping domestic companies to tie up with companies abroad. Like in this case, HCL has tied up, which is a domestic company, with Foxconn to develop semiconductor unit. It's giving land. It is providing the infrastructure. It is committing to create a conducive industrial climate of a scale, as I said, which is unprecedented. So there is lot that is the government bringing as an infrastructure support to make these units start work at the earliest. This is a totally new area for India with the demands, with the consequent demand on skilled labor power. That itself is going to be very big challenge for us to surmount, and for which the skilling mission itself has been repurposed to bring in more and more young women and men into the flow of STEM, what is called the science, technology training, to become ready to take up employment in this hugely exciting but very vast employment generating sector.
So how is it, right now the joint venture is with HCL and Foxconn. This kind of joint venture, how will it influence the future foreign investments and technology development?
As we go ahead, there will be lots of benefits coming through foreign investors because this is something in which India, along with USA and other competing countries, is making substantial inroads. And this is providing, because most major companies in the world are looking at high energy, high skill and high technology based products to market. And for them, therefore, the fact that India is doing this sort of a thing is a tremendous, it's the reason why there's so much of buzz around India as a manufacturing center.
Thank you for joining with us and sharing valuable inputs. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharjee.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Cabinet Decision, India's emerging semiconductor industry. The participants were Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, Economic Analyst, and Laxmi Devi, Senior Journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani.
Spotlight.